All right, we are doubling down on Montreal Canadiens related content because, honestly, there just happens to be too many darn topics to go out there and talk about, so we gotta kind of go through this rapid-fire mode. A lot of Canadian stuff gonna be popping up here on the channel over the next few days, but starting out with this player right here, what I wanted to do was explore the trade conversation and the newest ideas that have been tossed out there when it comes to Montreal Canadiens forward Joel Armia. Now, Armia is a name whom, if you've been thinking about the Canadiens and their trade scenario over the past few years, the trade block, as they say, Armia's name has probably popped in and around this world a bunch of times over the years. He's popped in, he's popped out, he's stuck around on the team, found a way to make himself a home in Montreal, but right now, Joel Armia is 31 years old, 6'4", 218, right-handed guy, signed on till the end of this upcoming season, 24-25, making $3.4 million a year. Initially a first-round, mid-round pick by the Buffalo Sabres in 2011, Armia worked his way up. He played on Buffalo, he was then on Winnipeg for a while, until finding a home with the Montreal Canadiens, where he maxed out, getting 30 points in 58 games played in 2019-20. In this season, Armia was a beast, and I think at the best of his game, you could kind of note of Armia as a very versatile, all-situations kind of winger. He had this really strange offensive touch. Like, in the O-zone, he had this weird ability to extend the puck really far past his normal reach, and then just kind of pull the puck around players, opposing players, and keep control of it, especially along the boards. He was a really odd board battle winning forward, and I'd say that the way that Armia was able to free up space in the offensive zone was so unique. I hadn't really seen much of that out of any other player in the NHL, let alone on the Canadiens. That Armia, especially heading into the postseason runs for the Habs, was a very effective player. 8 points, 21 games played as they went to the finals, 5 goals there too. But it was around this time that Armia started to show some of the warts in his NHL game. He started getting injured here and there, he started getting placed a little bit further down in the lineup, and in this most recent season, sure, he had 17 goals in 66 games, which is kinda nuts. It's a career high in goals for Armia, 25 total points, but he also did spend an extended amount of time in the AHL, 9 points, 8 games over there. He was, quite frankly, too good for the American Hockey League, but nowadays, when we think of Joel Armia, we think about the contract, we think about how he's not going to be playing in the top 6 of the Habs, he'll be a middle-to-bottom 6 guy for sure, and with all this in mind, we had ourselves a Twitter thread started out by Grant McCagg discussing how Joel Armia had 13 goals in his last 45 games. If he can score anywhere close to that in his first 45 of this season, and the Canadiens are out of the playoff hunt in early March, his $3.4 million cap hit on an expiring contract will be attractive to potential suitors. Armia was a presence in Montreal's run to the finals. And so, with this idea in mind, we're starting to think about the trade picture heading into the trade deadline of 2025. I don't think it's too hot of a take to say that the Montreal Canadiens are not going to really be all too competitive in the playoff race. Sure, they might be hovering around that wildcard spot for a good chunk of the year, but I don't really think it's projectable to say, oh yeah, they're a playoff team right now. So, for Joel Armia, for some of these other guys that are on expiring deals and could be seen as valuable assets, what is the price there, and what could a guy like Armia fetch in terms of the trade deadline market? This is where Darcy goes out there and replies, Armia's game translated very well into the playoffs. I could see them getting a mid-round pick and giving up more ice to a rookie. I don't think it's worth retaining salary because it won't get enough value to use a retention slot. A 6'3" two-way winger on an expiring contract on a 24-goal pace? That would fetch a third-round pick at a minimum, maybe even a second-round pick. If they take on half the salary, I could see a second at most. I can't see a second at 3.4 because most teams contending will be tight. I think they only have one retention slot, which could be David Savard. An ideal world, I think they get a second at full salary for Savard and a second for Armia at half. That is a cap hit below the league average for a 20-goal scorer. I don't see it being an issue. Every year teams give up seconds for that without even a thought of salary retention. Now, there also is some conversation here discussing Armia and his AHL stint when he was sent down to the Rocket. I think he played on a line with Josh Waugh, and there seemed to be very good chemistry between them. That line was too good for the AHL. Would love to see Armia reunited with Waugh and see if Armia can continue his elevated scoring. Elevated scoring indeed. I mean, as we had talked about, that goal production was pretty nuts for the 31-year-old Finn. 17 goals in total in 66 games played, with a good chunk of that coming in the last half of the year. If he's able to produce something similar to that in the 25-ish goal pace over the course of a full 82-game season, then by the time that trade deadline comes around, it would not be surprising if teams were clamoring down the door to take him on. I do think it's an interesting conversation to bring up how, if you wanted to talk about salary retention slots, there could be a little bit of a discussion to be had as to whether or not it's best suited to retain on Armia versus retaining on a guy like David Savard, who would also be a pretty big target on the trade market because, I mean, hey, big shot-blocking, physical right-handed defensemen are tough to come by. And if you wanted to talk about salary, let's go over to the Puckpedia page for the Montreal Canadiens. How do we do this here? Okay, let's go over to right here, and then if we go to the Canadiens, how does that look? Okay, yeah, we're still trying to navigate this website, right, since Cap Friendly is no longer here. But if you go over to these names, let's go over to defense. David Savard making $3.5 million a year. You've got Joel Armia making $3.4. They're very similar, but honestly, I'd say if you wanted to talk about which contract is more likely to get traded at full salary versus half salary, I think it would be a lot easier for a team to say, yeah, we want Armia at 50%. For David Savard, we could probably keep him at a little bit higher of a dollar amount, mostly because for defense, I mean, there literally are fewer defenders on a team compared to forwards. I think it's a little bit more affordable to use up some extra money on your D slots, although of course the prime scenario would be getting retained salary on all of these guys. But as we had talked about, the Montreal Canadiens do not have infinite salary cap retention slots, so they will have to be careful in choosing who it is ends up getting that 50% salary retained. If Joel Armia gets 3.4 cut off into one half, so 1.7 mil, let's say that gets the Canadiens a second round pick. I mean, you think about some of the other trades, Sean Monahan got a first, right? So there is an opportunity here for the Montreal Canadiens to really expand on what was a great second half of the year for Joel Armia. It could get them a very nice second round pick on a playoff team if it works out well. So I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the entire idea of Joel Armia fetching this much of a trade price should he continue his dominant goal-scoring prowess that he had in the second half of the year this prior season? Do you think it's possible that he goes out there and does that? How does his production translate into year 2? I say year 2 just because, you know, if you think about it, this is like the second year of Armia being quote-unquote bad. He had the AHL stint, and that was kind of a wake-up call for everybody that was a fan of this team. Hey, Armia is kind of already going through it, but then he came back and he was really good. Is this the revival of Armia? Is this what we have been waiting for out of this guy? Who really knows? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. How do you feel about Armia and the trade conversation? And bye.